and gentlemen, it's time for another round of Mind Your Fucking Business with your host, Jeffrey Krinsman.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, and good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're listening to us. This is the Mind Your Pucking Business podcast, brought to you by our good friends at the. I skipped a little. From the beautiful studios. I'm reading like work text at the same time, which is my problem. That's
There's a
entirely.
lot going on in the studio this morning.
Yeah,
huh?
that's entirely on me. From the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in
Oh, thank
Bergen
you.
County, New Jersey. This is your Mind Your Pucking Business podcast, brought to you, of course, by our good friends at the Bamboozle Project, as well as DraftKings. Go check out www.thebamboozleproject.com. Use promo code MYPB. Save yourself 20% off your entire order across their platform of products and really cool stuff there. We thank DraftKings as well. This is episode 192. That is 192. If you're joining us with the SAP features available to you today, we welcome you and we hope you enjoy your time listening to MYPB. You can send us your questions and comments at any time. I said last week this was the last time I was going to say it. I need to take it out. It's still in here. This will be the last time I say this. That you can send us your questions, mypbshow@gmail.com. And the reason being is no one ever sends us there, but you bombard us at Instagram, and that is at our Instagram platform. You can DM us at Mind Your Pucking Business, all one word. I was actually just responding to a bunch of you guys 2 seconds up until 2 seconds before we went live. Speaking of being live, we're live this morning. Today is March 26th. If you're tuning in or you're listening later and you wonder where we are in time, what we're talking about. And if you're listening to us live, you can listen to us on you can watch us live on Instagram or YouTube, or you can stream the show at your convenience at any time, and that would be on Spotify or iTunes. So plenty of options for you to get your MYPB fix should you look to do so. Everywhere. We are there if you want us to be there. All right, we were on last Wednesday, and last Thursday night, the Rangers had an original 6 matchup at home versus Toronto. Scheduling kind of quirk. They had played Toronto at home about 2.5 weeks earlier, and I know that because I was there with my son. So 2.5 weeks later, Toronto is back in the Garden again. The Rangers are down early. Will Borgen ties it at 1. And then, just like a typical in a frustrating season, you're tied at 1 late in the first, and you let up a goal with 10 seconds left. It's just like little things like that. And there's a lot of the little things. They may be little, but when they all happen a lot in one season, it adds up. And something like that really was annoying. Panarin ties it in the second, but they go on to lose 4-3 on Thursday night. Now, one thing, if you want to be positive, because I know there are still some of you out there, and we're going to talk about wild card situation and standings in a couple minutes. There are some of you, and you're entitled to think this, that say, hey, the Rangers right now are 1 point out. They have 74 points. Montreal has 75. Why can't they get in? Well, if they get in, one of the potential first-round matchups would be with Toronto. And I will say this, that this is 2 games against Toronto in the last 3 weeks. The Rangers have played pretty well, and they held the shot advantage. They had a much stronger shot advantage on that February 28th game that I was at. But, look, I mean, maybe if you meet Toronto down the road and you get in, and I've been saying for weeks, I don't think the Rangers are making the playoffs. But if you get in and there's a glimmer of hope there that you can maybe run with Toronto, I guess there is. Saturday, before the Vancouver game, they honor Sam Rosen. Now, one thing that I try to do here with this platform, right, is I think we try to be transparent and open, right? Like, this is good, this is bad. We don't always talk about positives. We don't always talk about negatives. We try to tell it like the way we interpret, right? Me and you. Mm-hmm. Although maybe it's more my interpretation, but it's me and you. Your interpretation matters. So I'm going to be very open with you guys on Saturday. I sat down and I watched the pregame show. We had something to go to as a family at night. So I had the whole day free, and I ended up somehow, I have to think about how this happened, but I was home by myself for a little while there during that ceremony before the game. And I found myself actually all of a sudden being upset about it. I've known Sam Rosen is leaving. It's been talked about on every single broadcast. Whenever the Rangers are away, the away team honors Sam Rosen. It is mentioned at length on every broadcast. It is mentioned on Instagram by us or any other Ranger page on MSG Network. It's mentioned, right? If you don't know that Sam Rosen is leaving, you are living under a rock, right? We all knew it. But there was something about Saturday that I wasn't like moved to tears, But I was upset. Like, I think it dawned on me as we get now into the single digits games remaining and the fact that those single digits may be the last games because there might not be postseason hockey, that Sam Rosen really is leaving soon. And when you watch some of the pregame stuff, or as you saw on Instagram, we put together like a 5-minute clip of all of our favorite calls throughout the years of Sam Rosen. And some of them go back to like the 90s. So we're not just dealing with stuff that, you guys know because you guys are all much younger than me that listen to us. But when you look back at all the memorable calls he's had, you realize that he really was, for a lot of you, including myself, and I'm 45. So if you'd have to be mid 50s or above, and most of you that listen are not. So Sam Rosen is the only voice you've known for Ranger hockey, which is amazing. I mean, you think about it, other than games where they'd be on national television, and obviously the voice that comes to mind is Doc Emmerich, who's now retired. It's been one voice. And Jeff Adelson saying congratulations to his uncle Sam Rosen on an amazing 40 years. He's right. I mean, Sam Rosen, I don't know why. I wasn't you know what? I had no desire to go to the game on Saturday for two reasons. One, they've been playing like crap. I don't want to go anymore. And second, I'll admit, like I'm not, when the ticket prices spiked up for Sam Rosen, I'm like, I like the guy, but I'm not going to sit there and fork out a ton of money for it. But I don't know why. I was sad. So we go into the game now on Saturday, and there are so many things this season. Here's what we're all going to do. We're going to have a group project in MYPB.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to write a book or whatever, comments on the internet about all the frustrating things that have happened in the 2024-2025 season. And when you write that book, okay, and when you think to yourself what chapter should be in the book, right, you're going to have a plethora of stuff to pick from. Like so many things that frustrated me. Like I'm getting mad even thinking about it. My blood pressure was boiling. However, right now, as to where it stands in the season, if you want my number one thing that pissed me off this season, like literally enraged me, and I put this on our Instagram story the other day. How in the world on Sam Rosen Day, right? You've just honored your broadcaster who's been there for 40 years, right? You're playing a game against the team where technically you're not mathematically eliminated. You need points. You come out in the first period and have one shot. You have one shot. Now, I won't even get into the fact that that one shot happened to be by Matt Rempe. But how? Can someone explain how it is remotely possible that on Sam Rosen Day, the team just elects to not show up? Now, they're in the building because they're all on the bench for the preceding 20-minute ceremony before the game, watching it. And then they come out, and JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, Lafreniere, Trocheck, anyone other than Matthew Rempe has no shot on goal. It's still bothering me. And I know they went on to win the game. We'll talk about the game in a minute, but I was like, I went from being sad at the start of the first period because of watching the Sam Rosen to like, I was legitimately pissed off. I was like, and we talk about it here. It's talked about everywhere, and it's correctly talked about that the team doesn't care, right? There's obviously something internally in this group right now that's not working. They don't care. And the best example of that may be what you saw in the first period in the Vancouver game.
Crazy. One
shot on goal on Sam Rosen Day in the first period. One shot.
Matt Rempe.
Now, we'll get into the LA
Probably
game.
From the blue line, not really a real shot either.
Right. Well, Matt Rempe doesn't know how to do a real shot, but that's here nor there. But we can get into it, and we will admit it. Like the LA game last night, they had 2 shots in the first period. That's not much better. But that doesn't enrage me to the level that I was pissed off on Saturday. So, Brzezinski, they go into the third period. They're tied. Johnny Brzezinski scores twice. The Rangers actually score 4 goals in the third, the last of which was a JT Miller empty net goal against his former team to go on to win 5-3. And it's good if you follow the Rangers through the years, and there was I don't know what Instagram page had it. I wish I bookmarked it and I didn't, but someone had a chart that when the Rangers do like these celebratory pregame stuff, like the Stephen McDonald Award, Messier night, which I was at in 2006, Richter night, all of these like special ceremonies, the 25th anniversary team a couple of years ago, they end up losing the game. It's like sure money. and they tried to lose the game in the first period with the way that they played. But it was good at least that they won for Sam, because they certainly didn't come out and look like they cared for the first 20 minutes. So, and yes, Jeff is right. The famous quote will be missed, and it's a power play goal. All right, the LA game last night. I travel for my real job a decent amount. I was in California for the day a couple weeks ago. I'm not a fan of the West Coast. Never been a fan of it. Just not my thing. I know some people, it's their jam. For me, it's not my thing. Just never been. The West Coast people have such an advantage, because when you're on the East Coast and you play there, it's 10:30 on a Tuesday. If it's the opposite for them, it's 4:30. Now you may say, well, that's annoying because you're at work or whatever. But I'd rather that than the 10:30 games. The 10:30 games are awful. But there's nothing they could do. I don't know why last night was not a 10 o'clock game. Now, I meant to look it up. Like, at least make it, if you're playing an East Coast team, why does it have to be 10:30 and not 10?
What does that translate to? 7:30?
Why couldn't it be a 7 o'clock start?
The game starts 7.
They usually start 7 anyway. So why are you playing an East Coast team at 10:30? I know it's not that important.
A little extra advantage.
I know it's a very unimportant point, but it's just my point. And yes, they're saying on Instagram, correct, the banner night in 95, when they raised the banner, they played Buffalo. And if I remember, that game was a Friday night in January, because the NHL was on a lockout. That was the year that B-Rock's Devils ended up coming back.
And twin mom journey, they lost the game she got engaged at.
They did?
Yeah, that's what she said just now on Instagram.
They won the game. I got engaged during, I don't know if I've ever told this story. It's totally random. We won't go down the story. But I randomly got engaged.
You randomly got
no. During, let me finish. Let me finish.
I randomly got engaged.
Let me finish.
We were winning. So I got engaged.
We were watching, the Rangers played the Caps in February of 2007 on a Saturday night. I think it was a Saturday. It was a Friday night. And we went out to dinner, and we were watching the game at home. Like, like people do these now, like proposal things. I see it all over Instagram. Like, there's flowers, there's backgrounds, or like promposals and all that stuff. I literally, it's embarrassing, but it's true. We were Jess and I were watching the game at our townhouse, and it was the second period. The Rangers were winning, and so she
felt
went
good.
No, she right. I was in a good mood. Proposed, watched the rest of the game, and that was it. Like, it was nothing crazy. But yes, they always lose these games. So Cup Banner is saying on Instagram that they lost that 95 game versus Buffalo, and that is true. That was a Friday night game after the lockout. I remember that. So it was good that they won it. Anyway, last night I'm watching the LA game. And I was watching the pregame only because it was 10 o'clock, and I don't normally watch pregames, but what else is on at that point? Steve Valiquette, who we know I'm not like the world's biggest fan of, is going on and on about praising how good LA is. Now, I don't know that much about LA. We go around the league here in MYPB not as often as we should, but I don't know enough about him. He said a term. I don't know if anyone was watching this, but I don't know if this is funny or stupid or what it even means. He was describing when he was in the studio with Bill Pito that LA, when you're playing LA, you have to expect to get, quote, low calorie chances, end quote. B-Rock, you want to take a stab at what that means? Well, that's another way to look at it. I'm thinking
you got it. This is like energy. Calorie is an energy metric. So maybe it's like, you gotta be high, fast paced, fast breaks.
So my take on it was, and if people want to put in the comments what they think that means, that's fine. My thought was that when he said low calorie chances, it meant that, like, you're not getting good quality, because if it's low calorie, it's bad. But it would be, then I wasn't sure, because I'm like, well, if you're trying to lose weight, it's good.
Low calorie chances. Maybe it's 5 on 5.
The way I interpret it as, you can have a lot of a low calorie food and not get fat.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what low calorie chances mean. But when he said it last night, because I was bored and it was 10:15 at night, anyway. Last night I mentioned before, if you stayed up, first period, 2 first period shots again, completely just out of the gate, not there, not into it, what you would expect. The Rangers get on the board in the second period. JT Miller scores a goal that they did get correct, Toronto. It did cross the line, and there was one angle they had that they showed where they like zoomed in, and you could see it really did cross the line, but barely. So JT Miller gets on the board. And then when we talk about like things that happen, it's like a never-ending story this season. It's like I've seen this script before within the season, and I'm going to see it again. The irony of the fact that the Rangers are up 1. Now, you didn't see the game. Can I guess?
I watched last night.
You watched the whole game?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I won't ask you what I was going to ask you because you already know the answer.
Well, yes, but you can. I wasn't like
Glued to the screen. I get it. Okay. So it's 1-0.
Yeah.
The Rangers are leading in the second period.
Yeah.
And they get they're up 1-0. And LA ties the game on the power play. Would you like to take a guess who took the penalty?
Oh, Matt Rempe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't have to watch the game to tell
Right.
what that is, right?
Yes. That is.
Or just before or after the fight?
That was after the fight, I believe. Matt Rempe takes a penalty, 1-1. And then again, like, why don't we just all pile it on here? Next penalty was not Rempe. And you want to take a guess? Because LA's about to take the lead 2-1 on a power play on someone's penalty. Who was it?
It was a tripping
Correct.
on the fast break.
Who tripped him?
Matt Rempe.
No. What other player would you say the Ranger fans?
Defense? Is it a terrible defensive play? Then I'll say Panarin.
No, we don't get on Panarin, although Chris will like it. And they are correctly identifying it on Instagram, DCP Wong, and that is Keandre Miller.
Oh, yeah.
So Keandre Miller, and Matt is saying on YouTube as well. Correct. So it's just ironic that you have a lead. There's 2 penalties that actually both end up biting you in the end because the team comes back and the LA scores. And it's just them again. Igor, good again with 31 saves. Rangers have more chances with 23, right? They started with only 2 shots in the first period, ended up being 23. I don't know if that means they were high calorie chances in return, but they ended up with 23 shots. You know, if I'm Igor Shesterkin, I'd like, maybe this is a summer question because we're going to have a long summer here to talk on MYPB. But if you're Igor Shesterkin, is there any part of you now? You got paid, and yes, part of your contract is about money and taking what you can get, and good for him for getting it. But is there a part of you now that is seeing what you're locked into for the next 8 years and saying to yourself, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, I shouldn't have stayed here, or I should have considered going in the open market to see if a contender would give me things. And DCP Wong with a great stat, which is also all you need to know. The Kings are the 28th out of 32 teams on the power play and scored twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, that sucks.
So, a bad loss last night. Now, they go to...
When you need points desperately.
When you need points. And it would have been, and there was a bunch of you that spoke to me about it yesterday, and I completely agreed, although we all together now were wrong, that it would be super Ranger-like to win last night against a good team in LA and then lose against the 2 terrible teams they have coming up this weekend with Anaheim on Friday and San Jose on Saturday. You know, if you believe, and again, I'm not here to tell you what to believe or not. I'm here to tell you to have your own opinion and roll with it, right? Rock with what you got. Whatever your brain's throwing at you, man, go with it. Go with it, right?
Yeah.
If you think that this team is going to make it, I just would be curious as to know, like, what you are seeing that I'm not, that they are not, that makes you think.
Look
that.
At this. In no way.
Yes.
Look at this.
This is our new graphic here, or new audio clip that B-Rock was happy to throw in there. So, yeah, I mean, so right now, if you look at the wild card, now here's where you can have some optimism. Again, I'm not boarding the train.
Yes.
The Rangers have 74 points. They have had as terrible of a year as you could possibly imagine.
Yes.
But in having 74 points, they're 1 point out of the wild card.
It's been a painful year.
They are 1 point behind Montreal. Now, the difference there, though, is that Montreal has 2 games in hand against the Rangers. So they have 1 point up plus
so
2.
mini playoffs.
Every game is a playoff game technically right now.
But when we come down to, we're under 10 games, and 2 of those games are the Canadians, which is a 4.
No. They don't play. Well, they don't play the Canadians. They have
said.
2 games in hand, meaning they've played 2 games less. They're done playing Montreal.
Oh, I thought you said they were playing.
No, they play 2 games less. They don't play head-to-head anymore.
Gotcha.
And the Rangers' schedule is mostly on the road.
Gotcha.
So,
and if there's a tie with the Islanders, the tie goes to the Islanders?
They do play the Islanders again. They're on Long Island in 2 weeks.
No, but I see them. The Islanders are above us with 74 points.
It would come down. I have to look at the full standings. It comes down to regulation wins is the first tiebreaker.
Okay.
Why don't we pull up Alvin's comment? And it's after the first Buffalo game. I had a bad feeling then in November that they weren't going to make it. That Buffalo game is, to me, where there was the first sign that there was a major problem. Unfortunately, I was there that night. They played a Buffalo team. The Rangers had been off for 4 days. And they just, they were down 6-1 in the second period. It's very rare. I can't remember a Ranger game that I left after the second period. The only times I can remember that is when my kids were little and we would go to preseason games. It didn't matter and they had to go to bed, so we would leave like it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the last regular season game I left in the end of the second period, and I was glad I did. But so the Rangers now 2 points or 1 point out. Question I wanted to pose, and it hasn't been discussed since, and Alex Henner, who was at that Buffalo game, he hasn't been back in the building since. I wish I had not been back in the building since, because I haven't seen anything good since then either. But a question I haven't asked yet, something we haven't covered, and I haven't really seen it mentioned too much. We all know Sam Rosen is leaving, right? He's out. He's gone. I haven't seen anything really discussed. Now, I have my guess. I'm going to give you my answer, and you can give me yours. But who is Sam Rosen's replacement next year? I would say it's between two people. I'm going to give you like what I think would be their first choice and option two. Kenny Albert, who does rain. Now, I don't really listen to Ranger games on the radio because I'm very rarely in my car during a game. I have. And I know that it flip-flops between Kenny Albert and Don LaGreca. I believe if they're both around and Kenny Albert doesn't have a schedule doing other things because he travels all the time, I believe that the main guy is Kenny Albert. All right, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Right. Okay, Sean is agreeing with me. I would think it's Kenny Albert's job to lose. But I could definitely see, like, Sam as a full-on play-by-play guy is there a lot. Kenny Albert may not be there a lot. But if it's not him, I would think it's Don LaGreca, which I'm fine with either of them. I don't think I have a preference. The difference to me, and I thought about this driving into the studio before, the difference is this, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just telling you. If you like the fact that Sam Rosen, is a diehard fan, right? And has those emotion-filled calls sometimes, then I think you would like LaGreca more. If you're into the more linguist, like Doc Emmerich was, Kenny Albert, I believe, does the national games now, or some of them, then I think Kenny Albert would be your pick.
Interesting.
Some of you guys are saying that John Giannone, John Giannone, aside from the rarity of filling in over the years, and it's been very sparse when he's done that, I don't think he has play-by-play experience, and I don't think he has enough play-by-play experience to be doing it in the New York market. I don't even think he's an option.
Wow.
So if it's not one of those two, now
He fills in, but yeah, you step aside, Johnny.
Now I would imagine that MSG or Bob Wischusen is another name from Alvin that would work, but we can talk about it in a minute. But I would imagine that the MSG network brass, which is really who decides this, they already know who it is. It's already been spoken with whoever the person is. It's accepted. They're not going to announce it to the end of the year. So Don always fills in when Sam is out, but Don doesn't do TV. Alvin is you're saying when Sam is out. Now I got to go back. Who fills in on TV? Is it Don LaGreca? I mean, Sam hasn't been out that much. He used to do NFL football on Sundays. He was always out. It's John Giannone, right? That's the limited experience he has. I don't know John Giannone would want that job. He's got a studio job. He doesn't travel with the team. He's not on the road for 41 games a year, staying in cities all week. I don't know that John Giannone would want it. Do I think Joe Micheletti will stay? I would. Cipriani is saying that he's heard Bob Wischusen and Brendan Burke. I don't think Brendan Burke leaves the Islander job. He's already employed by MSG. Now, Joe Micheletti, to your point, was the color guy on the Islanders and then came to the Rangers when JD left. If I'm Brendan Burke, he lives on Long Island. He's got a following with the fan base. I don't know that he wants to up his resume. I mean, maybe he does. Bob would choosing to me would be good. My only thing is if I'm Bob was choosing, this guy went from doing some games, then he was the Jets stuff. And now he seems like I'll see him on ESPN2 at 11 o'clock at night doing New Mexico State basketball. Like he just does a lot. You can't be doing that if you were the Rangers head guy. I don't know. Howie Rose is not going to come back out. Howie Rose got rid of doing the Islander gig because the travel was too big because he does 162 games for the Mets. So Howie Rose wouldn't be an option. I'm impressed that a lot of people in the comments, though, are that high on Bob Wischusen. I didn't think about that. That wouldn't be a bad choice. So I would say option one, though, is Kenny Albert. I think if Kenny Albert wants a job, it's his, but they'd have to work something out with his travel schedule. You can't be the main play-by-play guy and only do 50 of the 82 games. You can miss some. I don't think you can miss that much.
Why would he be missing any?
Because he does the national games. He does Nick stuff here and there. He's all over the place.
You gotta pick one job.
Right. If you can commit, I think it's him. And then I think the other one is Don LaGreca, who I like. There's no one that if you look at the candidates, and one of you has a good point. John Giannone is going through cancer treatment right now too. That's a very good point. I don't think he would be wanting this right now, but I don't think that there's anyone that I don't like. It's not like I'm sitting here saying, well, I hope they don't give it to this guy. I don't think there's anyone that I don't like. What do you think?
I mean,
you should do it.
I would. We just got a lot of MYPB episodes on the agenda here.
Yes, you do. So we shall see. But I don't know who should replace him. And here's the other problem. Whoever replaces him has a brutal job because you are literally filling shoes that cannot be filled. You are all set. So whoever takes the job, and this is why it's not personal. Whoever takes the job, go to November of this year. Rangers are 10 or 15 games into the season. And someone posts something, some Instagram page, probably us or someone else posts something like, what do you think about the job that John Jones is doing so far? It'll all be negative because it won't be Sam, right? It's just not Sam.
True. Very true.
All right. Going around the league, because I'm so sick and tired of talking about the Rangers a lot. Going around the league for a couple minutes because we are approaching playoff times, and I think we're going to have a really good guest for you, those of you that are watching next week. We should have a very good Ranger guest who a lot of you know, actually. I'm going to leave it at that. But if you go around the league and you look at the standings, let's look at the Metro. One thing that has been surprising, and you would think that this played to the Rangers' advantage, and it was the complete opposite because they suck, is that the Metro division is the worst division in the NHL. Other than the Caps, it has been a very lackluster division. The Caps are easily right now going to be number one in the Metro as well as number one in the entire East. So the Caps are the one seed. So if you get in and you get that last wild card, you're not playing Toronto, you're playing the Caps, which would be like a complete 180 from last year's matchup when you have those two teams. One playoff matchup that seems to be destined to happen, and it is the only one that looks like you can almost, I don't want to say you can write it in stone it's going to happen, but it's got a good chance, and that is the Hurricanes being the Metro 2 versus the Devils Metro 3. Yeah, it's going to be hard for the Devils to catch Carolina. So, I mean, Carolina is definitely the 2. So, if you're B-Rock sitting over there in the corner, who's our executive producer, he can start preparing to play Carolina, which he knows well. When did you play them? 2 years ago or last year? 2 years ago you played them. Right, 2 years. You beat us in the first round, then you play. Yes. In the Atlantic Division, you have a really good race here, and you should be paying attention. All three of these teams have played the exact same amount of games in 71. Toronto's at 89 points, tied with Florida at 89 points, and Tampa is at 87. Anyone who tells you, and I don't think he's watching today because I haven't seen him in the comments, so I'm not going directly at him, but we had this discussion, that tells you that John Cooper is an overrated coach is beyond me. Every team, every year, he is in the mix. And right now, he is 2 points out of the top spot in the Atlantic. So that race there. So here's what you know in the East. You can pretty much tell you could really tell the top 6 teams to get in. Toronto, Florida, Tampa, Washington, Carolina, and New Jersey. You have Ottawa, who's getting a lot closer. All right. Ottawa is almost trying to distance themselves to getting that number 1 wildcard slot, leaving the last wild card spot between the Canadiens, the Rangers, the Islanders, and the Red Wings. The Bruins are now too far back, and the Blue Jackets as well. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention them.
True.
So, and for those of you, Sean on Instagram, I don't see the Caps doing anything. I'm not buying the Caps at all. We'll do this when we talk playoff preview. I'm definitely not picking the Caps to win the cup. But there's just something with that team this year that is impressive. I don't know what it is. I don't know that it's enough to get them through, but I don't trust their goaltending in the playoffs, although the goaltending has been exceptional with Thompson this year. When you go to the Western Conference, which we rarely ever talk about, you have a clear team that is on the path to being the number one seed out there. And they are actually in a race with the Caps for the President's Trophy overall, and that is the Winnipeg Jets, who've had a remarkable year. Scott Arniel, who used to be the assistant coach with the Rangers under Alain Vigneault, took over in Winnipeg and has done a good job. They are at 102 points.
Mm-hmm.
They are looking like they are easily the one seed, and they would play, let's figure this out, the second wild card, which right now is St. Louis. St. Louis Blues are the second wild card. Yeah. There's more of a gap in the Western Conference with the last wild card being St. Louis and the first team that is outside of it. It's a little bit different than the East. And that team that is first out of it, the Rangers just saw last week, is the Flames. Now, those of you that are saying on Instagram the Jets are a mirage, I would agree with you that I would not pick Winnipeg to win the cup. But the one thing I will say, we know, is that the number one position of importance in the playoffs every single year is goaltending, and Connor Hellebuck is awesome. So that's their recipe. But would I bet on that happening? No. If you look at the West, aside from the Metro, as I mentioned a minute ago, being bad, the West, I don't ever remember a year or the disparity where one conference was so much better than the other. The Western Conference is so much better. Mm-hmm. You have the Stars at 94 points. You have the Avalanche at 91. That actually looks like, you know what? That's a first-round matchup. That's going to be the 2-3 matchup in the Central. Now, if you think to yourself, the Stars, right? They traded for Ratinen. Mm-hmm. They've been great all year. You have the Avalanche, who's made all these moves. I mean, VC and Lindgren aren't the moves that put you over the top, but have made these moves to make things happen. Those two teams are going to have to play each other in the first round, meaning that one of those teams gets knocked out, and whatever team is getting knocked out is a legit Stanley Cup contender. That is that's the best first round matchup there is. Mm-hmm. Then in the Pacific, and they said this on the broadcast last night, and I was like, how could this be true? And it is. I'm looking at it. Again, the Kings are going to play the Oilers in the first round, and the Kings can never get past the Oilers, ever. Well, I shouldn't say ever. We're just in recent years. They really haven't. And then you have the Golden Knights will play the second, or the better of the wild card, and that would be right now the Minnesota Wild. Yeah. Huh. So the two Stanley Cup first round matchups that you can almost bet on are going to happen for sure are the Devils and Hurricanes, and also the Stars and the Avalanche. And Chris, who I see is now in the comments, I don't know if he was here earlier when I was talking about Tampa and John Cooper, because we had this discussion and I said John Cooper is not an overrated coach, is now 2 points from being out of leading that division. So if you want to have some fun, because it's like March Madness and you're trying to pick winners, let's try and pick those first round winners. I'll let you guys pick as well. If you guys had to pick, now here's the one thing before we pick the Devils and the Hurricanes winner, because I'm going to have you all make a pick. You're going to pick a team and then the amount of games. I want you to just promise me that you're going to do this unbiasedly. Like, right? Because when it's the Devils involved, I'm going to give you my unbiased take. I would say that if I was making an early prediction there, knowing how really bad the Devils have been and they don't have Jack Hughes, is Hamilton coming back or no, B-Rock? No? Yeah. You have to take Carolina. And I would say 6 teams. And Chris, John Cooper's roster is not stacked this year. I know your argument, Chris, but it's not stacked this year. So I would say the Hurricanes in 6. You guys can put in the comments your predictions. And then this is, I think, a very hard one to pick. And I almost think that whatever team I pick, I have to pick in 7. And that would be the Stars and the Avalanche. I would say I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going to go with Dallas in 7. But that's a very long series. And that's the sort of series that whoever comes out of it bruised and wounded. Like you want to play them.
That might be the best series. Oh well, those two series are pretty good actually to watch.
East Stump, Hurricanes in 5, Devils missing their best player, which they are. You know, the thing with the Devils is it would be interesting if they had Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton healthy. Would you pick them based on the fact their goaltending still hasn't been good? You were just complaining, B-Rock, before to me about Markstrom again, right?
I want Allen in for the rest of the year. He's the starter.
Wow.
All right, yeah. See, they don't even have a starting goalie, so they don't have.
They don't
No,
even.
they do. Jake Allen led. It was like the maybe 2 weeks ago. He led the NHL in save percentage, goals allowed. He's on fire right now.
Okay.
He is playing good hockey right now. I want Jake Allen.
Okay, so go off what B-Rock says because he's our Devils reporter here. So you have they're going to start Jake Allen in game 1, but they don't have Hamilton and they don't have Hughes. I am taking I'm going to be generous. I like some of your predictions on Instagram. I see the Canes in 5. I could definitely see that happening. I'm going to be nice and I'm going to say the Canes in 6.
Wow.
And yes, Jake Allen, former Cup winner. However, to refine your magic for 2 months, and that team doesn't score a lot either, the Devils. So if the Devils were healthy, I would take the Devils, but they are not yet. The Devils have been decimated by injury. They're not getting sympathy from me, but they've been decimated by injury. So, yeah, I mean, look, the Eastern Conference is this. You're going to have, well, one of the wild cards you've got to imagine is Ottawa. So there's a chance if right now, actually, as it stands, if the season ended today, both wild cards would come out of the Atlantic, which also speaks to how terrible the Metropolitan Division is. I mean, it really is. So Canes all hype, Devils in 6. Yeah. Okay. Got it, sir.
So Ottawa's playing the Capitals. No,
so
Ottawa's playing the Leafs.
Ottawa would play, which would be a great series, not because I would care, although I would want Toronto, is because you'd have 2 Canadian teams going at it that are not that far from each other. That would be a cool series to watch. Then you would have Montreal and Washington in the other wild card matchup if it ended today. It's not. I don't know. I can't get overly excited about it. Speaking of Washington, I was alerted by our producer something, and I want to know if maybe B-Rock and I are wrong on this. We may be wrong here. I am not into or not into this Ovechkin goal race. Right? He's now 6 goals away from Gretzky. I haven't been following it that close, but I was always under the impression, now it's my fault for not doing research, that this was the all-time goal record that he's been chasing. Good for the Capitals for marketing it up. The NHL doing exactly what they should do. B-Rock came in and told me today that this record is not the all-time goal record. It's the all-time regular season goal record, which now I'm going to say it's still incredibly impressive, and I wish a player on the Rangers could accomplish something like that. But I was under the impression this was the all-time goal record. It's not. It's not the same thing.
It's not.
Is it? I don't know. You guys tell me. Like I think that it's. Again, I'm not trying to take anything away from it. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm just saying I thought he was catching Gretzky for the all-time goals he scored in everything, not preseason, regular season, and playoffs. And it's not. It's just regular season. Now, he's only 55 away from catching the all-time record, which he could do even though he's No. He's 6 away from the regular season record. He's 55 away from including.
Talk to me when you get those 55.
But he'll probably get there considering
playoff goals are more important than regular season goals.
Yes, they are. But I don't know why. I thought, and it's my own fault.
Like the only reason why you should be separating stats like that is if like the playoff structure was different and like, you know, all of a sudden we have way more games. So like, okay, well, he had more games to accomplish this. So
look, it's both incredibly impressive. And I'm not trying to take anything. It's not what I'm trying to do. I've always loved Ovechkin. As a matter of fact, even though he's tormented the Rangers, I love the guy. But it's just, to me, I had a wrong read on it. We'll take a couple questions before we head out, and that is, are we taking bets yet on for how long before Laviolette is fired?
I don't think he's the problem.
Yeah, but you can't run it back with this again. I'm not saying he is the problem.
Same stuff. This is the same thing we've seen the last 2 coaches.
Yeah,
you get a bump. You get a bump for a year, and then everybody's like, "Oh yeah, we're still here."
I think he is probably.
He's definitely getting fired, probably. But
If you're Laviolette, right, I believe he has another year on his deal. You could walk away from this mess, but if you walk away from it, you don't get paid. So I think you're better off, even though it would save you face to walk away. If you get fired, you're at least getting paid next year for either not working or going to take another NHL job.
yeah, take the money.
Which I would take the firing for sure.
Yeah.
It's not. Look, we have plenty of time to talk about Peter Laviolette, but this is not all on him. If you think that he shouldn't be here next year, which is kind of the boat I'm in, it doesn't mean that I'm pointing all the blame at him. But and Johnny's comment, which is I think he gets fired at breakup day, doesn't make sense to fire him now. They're not going to fire him now. I mean, there's no chance they're going to fire him now. But I don't know. So, all right, Rangers, Friday night in Anaheim, and then Saturday in San Jose. Then they come back home. They are off for a few days, and they will be then on Wednesday night next week. They are home against Minnesota. So now is where you see, like, the fact they only play 2 times in the next 7 days. That's where some of these other teams like Montreal that have games at hand on the Rangers are going to make them up. And you're going to have to do a lot of scoreboard watching if you think this team is getting in the playoffs. And I could see you guys on YouTube chat talking about candidates to replace him. There's plenty of time to do that. The other reason you can't talk about candidates right now, you don't know who's available. You don't know who's getting let go from gigs that they're on right now. Maybe someone in Philadelphia, hint, hint. Maybe someone in Pittsburgh, hint, hint, could be let go. And if they were let go, I'm not saying they deserve the job, but they certainly would be candidates. So how could you sit here and assess, who's going to take over if you don't know the options? We'll take Justin's question on Instagram. My thoughts on Chris Drury's tenure. Chris Drury has done a lot of right things here. I mean, there's some people I know that watch us and DM me all the time, and all they DM me is Drury hate, Drury hate, Drury hate. I hate him. I hate him. I'm not on that boat. Look, he hasn't been a perfect general manager. There are no perfect general managers, but I do think overall, I mean, look, you've been to the Eastern Conference Finals twice in 3 years. It's very hard for me. And you had a lead, 2-0 lead in the first round, in the first one, and you were up 2-1 in the one last year. It's very hard for me to then point my finger at the GM and say the general manager sucks. Like I don't get it. You want to talk about how he doesn't have moral compass, as some of you were saying. That's fair. That's definitely a negative, right? Maybe the way he handles personnel and stuff like that. I would agree with that. But the product on the ice, if I'm going to sit here and answer the question and rate his tenure, I'm going to rate it the fact they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals twice in 3 years rather than how he's handling. So, Drury is on a Brian Cashman track. Make that of what you will. Yeah, there are some. Brian Cashman has a job for life, but we don't cover baseball here, nor will we ever. So, we thank the Bamboozle Project as always for their sponsorship. Go check them out, thebamboozleproject.com. Use promo code MYPB at checkout. We thank DraftKings as well for their sponsorship. And we will talk to you guys next week.